childcare I need someday when I'm old. You'll have it under control, to say the least.
So I'm
You gotta go down to the gavel with the super.
oh,
Or gavel. Looks like it's working. I'd like to call to order the school district of Sturgeon Bay Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. Could everyone rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Buse, could you do the roll call?
Okay. Commissioner Schultz,
Here.
Commissioner Howard,
Here.
Commissioner Cruz. Here. Commissioner Holland. Here. Commissioner Stefani,
Here.
Commissioner Jennerjohn. Here. Commissioner Chisholm. Here. And Commissioner Wood.
Here. Excellent. Next, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Do note that we're going into closed session. So we have to recognize that. We would like to make a motion.
I will make the motion to adopt the agenda, noting that we will go into closed session per 19.551C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. One is mid-year performance evaluation of district administrator. We will return to open session.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Jennerjohn, and do we have a second? Second. Second. I heard Commissioner Wood first, so we're gonna do Jennerjohn Wood. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. So now we're down to the wonderful swimmer and doing great in math, as we saw in the paper, Christy Vaughn. Let us know what's going on.
So it's been a while since I've seen you. I wasn't here last month. But for the past couple of weeks, we've been selling carnations around the school for friends and significant others, and we passed those out yesterday for Valentine's Day. And we had some pretty good sales on that. This is one of the first years we've done that. We'll probably repeat it in the future. And then looking towards the future, we're kind of thinking about spring break and plans for activities before then. Back in December, we had a snow day right before Christmas break, which was.
You're welcome.
Thank you. But we were planning to have a talent show that day, which meant that got canceled. So that's okay. But we're thinking about days to reschedule that. And we're possibly thinking the day before spring break for that. And then we're also planning some dress up days for the week before as like a spirit week, as well as the annual boys volleyball tournament, which everyone loves and is super excited about. And because we have Cooper time this year, we'll get to have more teams and more people join, which a lot of people are already talking about already. So I think that'll be pretty fun.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And perhaps in fairness, Christy, you weren't slacking and skipping the last school board meeting because that fell during what week?
Finals week,
Finals.
on my birthday.
Oh.
Well, that part didn't come up, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's nothing you'd rather do than finals on your birthday.
It
Right?
is my favorite activity.
Good. Next, we are to the public comments section. Speakers are asked to share their name, address, and be aware that comments may be limited to 3 minutes at the discretion of the board president. Do we have anyone that wishes to approach the podium? No one. Seeing no one, we are going down to the recognition portion of the evening. And we have the state dance team here. So that's really great.
Principal Nerby, Coach Probson, and young ladies, if you want to step on up to the podium, we'll get your picture.
As they're coming up, I'm excited to welcome the dance team here tonight. Competed at state about a week and a half ago or so. What's really cool is they qualified in 2 different areas for state. So they in hip hop, They got second place and in Palm, fourth place, to earn their spots to state. So super excited about that. And then we held a, live, viewing party in Alumni Hall too, so that family or friends and community can come and watch them perform. So pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to turn over to Ms. Propson, who led this team to state. So I'm going to introduce
Right.
them and
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for inviting us. It's been a pretty exciting year to say the least. Last year, we kicked it off with kind of I don't know, I'll call it a dream of kind of having a team for our own purposes, if you will, our own, and do it on a competitive basis because, we have a lot of rising talent and wanted to be able to showcase that. And, what would happen if we tried that? So last year, we entered a couple competitions. We learned a lot. I think I learned the most. And we all came back really hungry and eager for what could possibly happen this year. And boy, did we set the bar pretty high for ourselves. I'm proud to say we achieved that goal. We started back in August. I don't know if you guys realize it's a winter sport, but in the world of competitive dance, I tell the parents two things. Number one, there's no such thing as just, the winter season for, preparing. We started back in August. And number two, I always say, repeat after me, dance is not a cheap sport. Because yeah, you'd be surprised. But anyway, we started back in August. We kind of set our goals, set our sights on what we wanted to achieve. And we went back to the last week in January when they were awarded state bids in both of their categories. So proud of the girls, proud of what we accomplished, proud of and excited for all the younger followers that have taken note and are so excited to see what we can do and how we can maybe bring middle school on board. Yes, I'm looking at you, Mark, where we are next year. It's a really, really significantly, a big growing sport across, I'll say the state of Wisconsin, but it's across the country. It's a very competitive and I don't know, what else would you say? It's definitely a great venue for, I'll say girls, but there's a lot of guys that are also participating to show off both their artistic and athleticism. So with that, let me introduce who we have tonight. So seniors, if you want to take a step forward, we have Claire Bone, Andrew Wilkie, and our two senior captains, Tia Lemieux and Claire Dixon. We're missing two other seniors who aren't here tonight, Kaylee Paulbach and Cheyenne Abraham. Yes, 16 years is going to be hard to fill, but so grateful for the time that they've invested and wishing them well as they maybe consider dance in their college future. So juniors, if you want to step forward. All the way down, we have Eva Lyberg, Ellie Propson, Gabby Lewitt, and we're missing Mercedes Hanley tonight. Looking forward to having them come back next year as leaders and bringing everyone along as and showing them the way. Freshman, sophomore, we have Hadley Gigstead, your second year. Heather Hubbard, first year rookie. Kayla Wolf, first year rookie. Sorry. Apparently I thought this was one of our managers, Ava Violet, who joined us as oh boy, how do we define your role? Yeah. But yeah, great to have her energy and enthusiasm. So thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing along with us as we were at state. I know there's a lot of people back here at the viewing party watching and sharing along, and we hope to keep it going. Thank you.
Can we take a quick snapshot while I had the chance to take two shots. Oh, you saw it already. Okay, that's good. Just making sure it'll be out on Facebook, so more popular than always.
we are gonna take a quick 5-minute break just to say hello and thank you and all that. So we're gonna go into recess here.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Thank you, guys.
No, we're eating. Yeah, I will get it back to you. I will get it back to you. Actually,
I know.
I was just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Of course, that's kind of fun. Good job. Congratulations. We understand. Oh, my dad.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was some. Some things in the picture. Set it out. So here he goes. They were short, but I think they got it.
I'm gonna bring us back into session. So now we are down to the consent agenda, which consists of approving the meeting minutes of January 11th and also the board retreat of February 1st. Approved January bills, approved grants and donations, and those consist of Alyssa Campbell was a student of Sawyer Elementary. She chose Sawyer Elementary as she was in one of the first grades to open the door, in quotes, to the new school. She donated $3,000 to support families with outstanding lunch balances with students enrolled at Sawyer Elementary. We divided her donation among 10 families. There was an anonymous donation for $660 for the middle school and high school tech programs. On Deck Company donated $250 for the student recognition program. Econo Foods donated $58.40 to Sawyer Winter Celebration Treats. There was an anonymous donation for $50 to the high school special education. $100 donation, anonymous donation to student fees. The Door County Community Foundation donated $500 to the Kind Clipper Club. And next we have the Sturgeon Bay Parent Teacher Group donated $1,500 towards the 5th grade Madison trip. Door Kiwani Retired Educators Association donated $120 to support 6 students in the Educators Rising program. And Service Club received a $250 donation from Thrivent for Project Linus and Knit for Peace. Thrivent also donated shirts to the club. Thank you to these groups and individuals associated with them for their generosity. Resignations and retirements. Mike Thompson is resigning from his position as head varsity baseball coach. Michelle Forrest has resigned from her 4K teaching associate position at Sawyer. Sarah Clark has resigned from her TJ Walker math teaching position at the end of the year. Terry Van Leeshout has resigned from her TJ Walker science teaching position at the end of the year. And Casey Manders has resigned from his student information and data specialist position. A motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented is recommended. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Chisholm and seconded by Commissioner Holland to approve the consent agenda as presented. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we are down to the operations, point number 2, approved high school coaching positions. Point A, approved track and field assistant coach.
Thank you. John Rosenthal has decided to return as an assistant high school track coach for the Hurdlers. He's coached for it for many years, as many of you know. John had stepped down from coaching this past year. As a result, he needs to be approved to be reinstated. Fortunate to have John Rosenthal return as an assistant track and field coach. So for the motion on 2A, a motion to approve John Rosenthal as an assistant track and field coach is recommended.
I move to approve John Rosenthal as an assistant track and field coach.
Second. Oh. Who was that second? Sorry. Damon. We have a motion by Commissioner Holland, second by Commissioner Howard to approve John Rosenthal as assistant track and field coach. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we are to 2B, which is approved varsity baseball head coach.
Yes, thank you. Neil Henry Gillis was a social studies teacher and boys head baseball coach in Peshtigo for the past 6 years. He also spent 3 years as a JV coach before he took over as Peshtigo's head baseball coach. As some of you may recognize that name, right? Neil has come to us as a middle school social studies teacher, and now he's very excited to take over as our new head baseball coach. Principal Nerby and Athletic Director Michael recommend Neil Henry Gillis as our new head baseball coach for the Sturgeon Bay High School baseball team. Motion to approve Neil Henry Gillis as our varsity baseball head coach is recommended.
I move to approve Neil Henry Gillis as the varsity baseball head coach.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Cruz, second by Commissioner Jenner-John to approve Neil Henry Gillis as the varsity baseball head coach. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're down to approve the girls soccer coaches.
Yeah, so we'll call it 2C and Roman numeral 1, Bob Desitel or Robert Desitel, officially, I guess, in our packet, would be resuming his head coaching career as the girls head soccer coach. Bob had stepped down last year coaching the girls team for more than 10 years to enjoy some time in coaching retirement, if you will. He's excited about coming back and working with our assistant coach. He'll be listed next. Excited to have him lead our girls soccer program for the upcoming season. Principal Nerby and Athletic Director Michael recommend Robert Desitel as our new girls soccer coach for the 2023 spring soccer season. Motion to approve Bob Desitel as the girls head soccer coach is recommended.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve Robert Desitel as the girls' head soccer coach.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Holland, second by Commissioner Wood to approve Robert Desitel as the girls head soccer coach. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So now we are at, this is point C2. Jenna Augustin.
Yes, so Jenna Augustin, as you may know, is an English teacher here at the high school. She played soccer for Coach Desitel as a Clipper during her high school years at Sturgeon Bay. Principal Nerby and Athletic Director Michael recommend Jenna Augustin as our new girls soccer assistant coach for the 2023 spring soccer season. A motion to approve Jenna Augustin as our girls assistant soccer coach is recommended.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve Jenna Oxton as the girls' assistant soccer coach.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Jenajon, second by Commissioner Chisholm to approve Jenna Augustin as the girls' assistant soccer coach. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So now we are down to point D, approve co-head coaches for strength and conditioning.
Yes, so got 2D, and we'll call it, well, actually, I'll read the first paragraph. I apologize, get ahead of myself. Principal Derby Athletic Director Michael recommends Zach Elbers, so high school tech ed teacher for us, and Neil Henry Gillis, middle school social studies, as we just mentioned, to be our co-head coaches for our new strength and conditioning coaches for the high school students and our student athletes on this campus. Neil Henry Gillis and Zach Elbers are both teachers in the district, of course, and both are coaches and have strength and conditioning experience, along with the ability to design workouts that would benefit our students and student athletes. Zach and Neil would cover morning and after school training sessions in our weight room, as per Principal Derby and Athletic Director Michael. So we'll go with 2D Roman numeral 1, a motion to approve Zach Elbers as co-head coach for strength and conditioning is recommended.
I move to approve Zach Elbers as, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, you did right.
Okay, I
Good.
thought I needed, sorry.
You did.
Okay, I move to approve Zach Elbers as the co-head coach for strength and conditioning.
Do we have a second? Second. Right. We have a motion by Commissioner Cruz, second by Commissioner Howard to approve Zach Elbers as co-head coach for strength and conditioning. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
For 2D Roman numeral 2, then again, same concept, but a motion to approve Neil Henry Gillis as a co-head coach for strength and conditioning is recommended.
I'll move to approve Neil Henry Gillis as co-head coach for strength and conditioning.
Second.
Second. So we have a motion by Commissioner Howard, second by Commissioner Holland to approve Neil Henry Gillis as the co-head coach for strength and conditioning. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So now we are at point 3, approve the new hire of Associate Daniel Tauscher, the Library Media Center Teacher Associate, Sawyer Elementary School.
Principal Katie DeVillers is pleased to recommend Daniel Tauscher for the Library Media Center Teacher Associate position at Sawyer Elementary School, starting February 6th, pending tonight's approval. Daniel is a licensed school counselor. She has experience working with early childhood through first grade students. Danielle's previous supervisor reports that she always goes the extra mile, quote unquote, to serve her students and the school community. Danielle is very excited to use her experience and skill set in her new role in our Sawyer Library. Danielle completed her counseling internship in all buildings in our district back in the 2019-2020 school year. We're excited to welcome Danielle back to our district at Sawyer and congratulate her on this new position for her. A motion to approve Danielle Tauscher as the Library and Media Center Teacher Associate at Sawyer is recommended.
I'll make a motion to approve Danielle Tauscher as the Library Media Center Teacher Associate. It's like. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jenajon, second by Commissioner Chisholm to approve Daniel Tauscher as the Library Media Center Teacher at Sawyer Elementary. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're down to approve the non-classified contract renewal.
Yeah, motion to renew the contracts for these positions, our human resource specialist, our bookkeeper / payroll clerk. I'm going to skip over student information and data specialist due to the resignation we covered earlier that technically would go into effect sometime in April. And our special education assistant, as well as our superintendent / board assistant. Those are recommended.
Do I have a motion?
I move to renew the contracts for our human resources specialist, bookkeeper, payroll clerk, special education assistant, and superintendent / board assistant.
All right, so we have Commissioner Chisholm made the motion, Commissioner Jenajon seconded to renew the contracts for our human resource specialist, bookkeeper / payroll clerk, special education assistant, and superintendent / board assistant. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. So now we are at point 5, approve administrative contract renewal.
Thank you. As we discussed last month at our January 11th closed session, prior to the Board of Education meeting, how the timeline really works. Again, for the public, anyone that might watch this, I'll just hit on these high points. As a reminder, school administrators must receive a preliminary notice of non-renewal at least 5 months prior to the expiration of the contract, which is why we give this initial attention as a board in January. If no formal notice of renewal or non-renewal is given at least 4 months prior to the expiration of the contract, then the contract continues for 2 years in the state of Wisconsin. Rather than simply have a lack of action constitute renewal, right? Our board has felt it is appropriate, and I would agree to take formal action. As another reminder, even though contracts are brought forward for renewal as per the timelines that align with state statute, the board has neither entertained compensation recommendations nor decided on compensation, and we know that occurs later in the spring. Typically, the board approves individual teacher contracts in the April board meeting and related compensation, as the board knows, and then moves on to the compensation of hourly employees, our unclassified contracts we just renewed in the previous item, and administrators then in this item in the month of May. Again, that's typical. A motion to approve the contracts of high school principal, middle school principal, Sunrise School principal, Sawyer School principal, director of special education and pupil services, director of teaching, learning and technology, director of buildings and grounds, director of food service, business manager, and superintendent is recommended.
Do we have a motion to approve a whole bunch of people?
I move to renew the contracts for the high school principal, middle school principal, Sunrise School principal, Sawyer School principal, director of special education and pupil services, director of teaching, learning and technology, director of buildings and grounds, director of food service, business manager, and superintendent.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Schultz, seconded by Commissioner Howard, to approve the high school principal, middle school principal, Sunrise School principal, Sawyer School principal, director of special education and pupil services, director of teaching, learning and technology, director of building and grounds, director of food service, business manager, and superintendent. All those in further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we are at point number 6, approve multi-function printer contract lease.
And possibly the most exciting agenda item of the evening. Okay. So after working with WDI, Wisconsin Document Imaging, since at least 2010, and it sounds like probably longer, but there was a name change somewhere. The business office and our technology department are recommending to me and to us really that we continue our relationship for at least another 5 years. With the expiration of the current lease later this month, WDI brought us a proposal that sees our monthly base cost go up $90 a month, that's district-wide, and no change in our per page printing costs. The quote is based on the Sourcewell Co-op negotiated pricing, as Jake adds here for us, which is why it's such a good price. A motion to approve a 60-month multi-function printer contract lease as quoted and presented with Wisconsin Document Imaging is recommended.
I move to approve a 60-month multi-function printer contract lease as quoted and presented with Wisconsin Document Imaging.
Second, okay. Commissioner Holland made the motion, Commissioner Jernigan seconded to approve a 60-month multi-function printer contract lease as quoted and presented with Wisconsin Document Imaging. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next we are at point 7, and this is to remove or to approve the Rattler Community Facility process payment.
I'll read the notes while I'm doing that. Maybe if a couple of our guests, Craig Siegel and Mark Schuster, if you want to step to the podium. If nothing else, even though we don't need you to formally present in case someone has a question or to say hi, we can do that. Earlier this year in a business manager update, the board knows, and then again at the board retreat early this month, we spoke about these new leaders. In this case, again, gentlemen probably are familiar to most of you, Craig Siegel, Mark Schuster, who've taken over and expanded athletic and community center planning and fundraising effort in our community. People have begun working with Rettler Corporation on updated designs or connecting with some community partners and so forth. As the baton was handed off to these gentlemen, so were the plans that the previous group worked on, that the board has heard about before, right, with Mark Isaacson Design and Goldwyn Engineering. The plan is not only to use, but build upon those designs that were put together with the previous group, as well as the planning dollars that were put forth and spent by our booster club, the city of Sturgeon Bay, and as the board knows, the school district. Rettler will put together topographic mapping and updating designs for the outdoor athletic facility, a community center concept, and a PAC, which again are quite new to some folks, and more people will be hearing about that, I'm sure, soon. As shared previously, Rettler also assists school and community groups with fundraising to make these types of projects become a reality. Copy of the agreement document with the additional information is included in the meeting packet for your reference. But again, tonight, at this point, we're simply looking to have the board act upon those associated planning dollars. To be clear for the community, the school district is neither acting as a sole funder of any construction, nor is the school district planning to go to referendum for this purpose. The district is assisting what needs to be a community effort with some financial support for the planning effort, which then allows other community efforts, conversations, and planning efforts to continue. So, first of all, I'll get on a motion to approve the $9,850 payment to Rettler Corporation as presented is recommended.
My motion to approve $9,850 payment to Rutland Corporation.
Second. Right, we have a motion by Commissioner Jernigan and second by Commissioner Howard to approve the $9,850 payment to Rettler Corporation as presented. Further discussion. I'm just going to put 2 cents in here just to make it very clear. The earlier it was said, but I'm just going to footnote it as well. The Mark Isaacson design and the Goldwyn engineering design that was done before that the board had approved years ago. I don't even know. I mean, it goes back some time. Both of which are going to be used by Rettler. So this is not. It's not that went for naught. We're going to build upon that in a much cohesive manner for a plan. And then once again, fundraising opportunities will commence to make whatever the plan is some kind of reality. Obviously, we're not approving the plan tonight. There would be a plan that would all sorts of people would have to. We are in infancy right now. The city would have to approve. We would have to approve multiple. I mean, jurisdictions. It's a big deal, but we have to start somewhere. So that's what this is, and that's what you're voting on. So anyway,
and I think we have at least a board member or two that met a Rettler gentleman or two down at school board convention, right? So not that the board doesn't believe that Rettler really exists because they've helped some school district, but we have a few of our board members that have a chance to actually meet, and I forget which gentleman it is from Rettler. I'm drawing a blank right now, but anyway.
And they've done that. They've done this here in Wisconsin, which I just talked with them. They were showing me some things that were done in Wausau. They were showing me other I forget even the school. New Berlin was another one. They were showing us various things that were kind of done. So they certainly are used to working with school districts here in the state to make plans. So. Anyway, didn't want to steal your thunder. Anything you'd like to add?
We don't have to talk, we're fine. We're doing great. Which usually I like to talk, but.
I'd like to hear though what this means, tell us just a high level view of what we're talking about, this scope of the mapping for the outdoor athletic facility, community center, and PAC, fundraising that will go behind that.
So Rettler Corp will start with, bringing in additional survey work to include stormwater, sewer, electrical, all the pieces that Baldwin started with, but are not in that part of the plan. And then the other piece of it is to take all of the actual land that we have and lay out a design that actually fits everything on it and updating everything as opposed to a couple of pieces and kind of piecing together what we have as opposed to redesigning the whole space that we have. So that's the start of it. From there, then we can kind of look at is it best to go this route with certain materials, parts of the project, or do we need to go another route because it's just too costly? But we just need that starting piece to know kind of what those numbers are in the end.
To give you a little background also, what we've done before we came to you is we looked at how would this play out if it came to fruition. Obviously, the first thing is Craig and I agreeing to take up the flag for this. And then looking at the first step, which is we need to put a plan in place. After that part, or while that's been going on, we've met with the city, we've met with Raybrook, we've met with DSB, we're looking at all the different funding sources that will need to be included in this. Obviously, you guys are part of that too. From there, we've earmarked people that we believe within the community would be a broad spectrum of residents that have children or, just been here a long time to whiteboard to make sure that we're getting insights on everything and then start presentations. So it's a big project, but I think that it's a very doable project. I think it's a very needed project. We can talk about so many avenues of it. Athletics alone, just for athletics. Children that live in Sturgeon Bay that are going to other schools because facilities are better. Wanting to come and relocate here as a family for a job, and aren't different facilities. So it's really a needed piece for the future of the community, the school, everyone included. So hopefully have your support on it. And
And the land that you're looking at is the land over by Sunrise, correct? That whole, what's the athletic
Yep,
area
Yep, so that
now?
big chunk of land across, kind of in between the middle school, high school and Sunrise. And then if need be, John from Rattler also asked about that parcel between the middle school and NWTC.
And, no secret, we've also talked to the city about the softball field on the other side. So we're scoping out what could be, the campus for all of these pieces, some of these pieces that would work the best for the community and the school itself.
I missed the board retreat, so I'm sorry if this was discussed there, but can you?
I did too.
Oh.
Great.
But just sort of a little bit more information about what the dream is of it being an athletic facility and a community center and a PAC. And if you don't have the answer, then that's
Great
okay.
question.
Well, you mean how it looks? Do you mean where it would be?
Whatever you want to tell us.
Well, there's pie in the sky, right?
Yeah,
And the first step is this money is to have Rattler draw out some plans. And there'll be how many? Is it one,
You said at least four.
at least four? So we'll have different options, but
renderings.
we know that the auditorium is past its prime. We also know that as a community, it could be a very good resource if it's updated or new and has more seats for conferences, concerts, all of those. Where it all goes, I don't know. Community center's been batted around by a lot of different entities on a city level and also on a county level. So there's potential players on that because they're looking at something that could service the entire county, which is a subset of just a bigger plan. So
yeah, it's cool to think of it serving the wider community in a big way. And the school district. I mean, that's what
These two gentlemen certainly know that, and the board knows, but the land across the street we're talking about, and someone watches this on YouTube or something later, right? There's some land owned by the school district and certainly some land owned by the city of Sturgeon Bay, right? So there's been a connection between the district and the city that goes back who knows how many years. And in essence, we know whether it's just the city or just the school district, right? A project's not gonna happen. Right? But it takes all sorts of different players. And I think without getting too far into it, Mark and I haven't talked about this recently, but Craig and I certainly have talked, right? But some of the key people that we would always talk with, that's where some of the other pieces came, like, well, there are some, individuals and or entities that would love to see, again, a couple of the other pieces referenced that you haven't heard about before. That's really pretty recent. Again, I don't want to get too far into it, but is there anything else, Craig, or is there anything else that you think should be added at this point?
I think it's all pretty recent. I don't know what, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe, that we kind of. It started as like just looking at the athletic piece and then it just kind of blossomed into all three of the spaces and. Thankfully, Mark is, I don't know what the right word is, but he said he'd come along with me on the ride. And it's like, we're both people that we don't have any particular agenda, right? We're not trying to push any single item on it. We just think that these three pieces are very important for our district and our community and the county as a whole, so we just.
Well, I think, Dan, you hit it up. I mean, it's being talked about and it has been talked about. And okay, we can keep playing kick the can, but now with the fact that we know that there's so many people interested in it. And we also know that on potential, these are all potentials, but there's more room tax dollars. So there's a way to look at generating revenue from grants and other aspects of the increase in room tax. So that's another reason at this point in time that this feels like a good thing to look at. And I have to give Craig credit, really. He has taken this upon himself and then did ask me to be a part of it, but I'm really glad that he asked. It's a team. It's a team.
But I think everyone can appreciate too that the city, with different development, different things that have happened in recent years, the city wants to plan ahead, right, for different, you mentioned jobs, right, whether it's a particular very large employer that wants to grow, all of our different, how many businesses aren't looking for more employees, right? I mean, Jay can speak to that every month for us. So all those different amenities, the athletic fields are certainly a part of that, but not all of it. And so whether, and I think Craig and I were just talking in his math classroom the other day, not that long ago, there weren't going to be, and again, not to be partial for one gas station, right, but 2 quick trips, or, Fleet Farm where I can find this fish and lure that I don't already get at Howie's, or what, just, there's different things where some people are going, wow, there are actually some changes and developments that I didn't think were going to happen. And so
This
this
has been an
fits.
accurate number, but there's something like 1,100 beds right now being built within Sturgeon Bay, not all proper for the school district, but somewhere outside of that. But when you look at that, I mean, that's okay, planning for the future, enticing those families to come here instead of somewhere else.
And it is families that we need in the city. It's people with kids that will grow and.
Some of, can we just get back to like the sports aspect of it? Are you kind of looking towards this as hoping to host regional, sectional, like competition? Are you planning for
I'd like
that?
to
Like,
host a track meet.
Yeah, start there.
totally,
But you know what I mean? Yeah.
But I mean, like, with Door County being such a draw, I would imagine, why wouldn't we host things? But is that something specific that needs
It's
to
not
be?
specific, but it should be on the table as part of it. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many pieces right now that are in a big bucket. Right now you can't host little league tournaments down at Sunset because I believe the field's too short for that, but so that's in the bucket of ways and means to look at traveling teams or different aspects or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, anything and everything that would want to come here and give us money and
Exactly.
stay in our hotel rooms and eat at our restaurants.
Shop our,
Yeah, shop.
buy
Think shop any-
kayaks, maybe.
Sure, I'll take that.
Give us blood for Bay Shore. There, I said it first.
So I can get my banner.
I think something Craig said to me the other day that I think the board can appreciate kind of as we wrap up this brief discussion tonight, but if whatever flows out of this, say, again, I'm paraphrasing Mr. Siegel here, but let's say there's 8 different cool ideas that really, people are excited about. But in the end, as it all comes out and people and donors, okay, 6 of the 8 happen. That people hopefully will be okay with that because that's, and maybe there's 2 things that didn't get legged in the end, just in our brief conversation, right? But boy, if 6 things come to fruition at some point that didn't happen before, with 1 or 2 of those things that have been talked about for years and years and years and years with the track and other stuff, I mean, it's like, how much better off the community would be. And I just thought you were spot on with that, Mr. Siegel saying that.
So true.
That's a win.
And Rattler would give you a phased approach to.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it all in one.
Correct.
round.
Right.
So, yeah.
We're all on our own.
That was one of the things
Yeah.
that we saw at Rattler's, that where they talked about a series of years of investment. Where pieces were added along the way based on priorities.
Great point.
So I think, any more discussion? All, we do not have a motion yet.
Yeah,
We do have a motion and a second right there. Here we go, my notes are on the next back. Yes, so we have a motion by Commissioner Jenner, second by Commissioner Howard, for this, further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carried.
You have
Thank
to
you.
go when the first plans would be.
Well, I'm
right?
calling John tomorrow morning, so. April,
Yeah.
I think he said April,
Hmm.
which that's.
It'd be wonderful. We can see something.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, we'll see, but, you know,
That's really cool.
thank you very much. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank
Thank you both.
Thanks for coming. Now we're down to point 8, professional staff annual compensation review update. This is just informational item.
Yeah, so rather than read you the paragraphs you've seen, and again, you've seen emails from me on the topic, and I'm not gonna read a bunch of stuff to you. I'll boil it down to the high point. So at your place at the table tonight, and again, I know you've seen this electronically, but to save you, messing around with your email tonight, but I know all the different things and some things that developed more recently. So we had this review meeting that we have annually last Tuesday. Thanks to both Roger Wood and Mike Stefani for serving as board reps. I know we have a couple different people that are interested and or have served on that in the past. And really, it's a conversation between some board representatives and some teacher reps about different key topics, right? It's not negotiations or any of that from years gone by. And really, these two documents give you all the high points. What I'm gonna do is just jump into on the main packet itself. I'm gonna take it to the 3rd page. So the board knows this, but on page 3 there, there's a little information about the salary ladder. That's something that the board looks at, boy, in recent years, every year, as you look at different updates, and Jake usually does some different projections for us. So that, in theory, would be a part of our March learning session and potentially April learning session, depending on how the board conversation wants to go. So again, remember this annual review meeting, we moved from April to February to give us a little bit more time and not have kind of that rushed feel. So we're going to talk more about that salary ladder, which is talked about on pages 3, as well as a little bit on page 4. I'll flip over to page 4. What you then see near the top of page 4, where it's underlined, I have the group review the notes and then discuss the following. So that was, Jake has a little bit of budgetary information you've seen from him before, since we know we have state budget thing going on. In fact, the governor is giving I'm not sure exactly what time that started now. I think about it. Okay, so his official state budget address, which again, still doesn't lock anything in. We all know how the politics will play out the next few months. But that was going on already this evening. And then we know, again, I touched on the March and April learning sessions, so we can talk about that. And then one of our teachers who's really been a part of a lot of these conversations, just does an excellent job of making good points. Just kind of talked about, hey, as we have to make changes to the ladder, people coming in new don't realize the difference, doesn't impact them as much. But people that are returning, sometimes there's an impact on them, of course. Moving on from there, the additional employment pay schedule appendix D mentioned in the middle of page 4. Why don't I have you flip over to page 5, where I have the group review the notes and then discuss the following. The first bullet point is that we should probably update the curriculum writing rates, and I think it's safe to say that, again, while yes, pending the state budget, Jake and I would not disagree with that at all, nor with the principals. We haven't updated that particular hourly rate in some time, and then probably, this would be one of a couple, 2, 3 key items that we want to probably look at a little bit more in the next month or two. The next item, moving on from there, sick days or PTO, flexible time. This one probably the single most item that got discussion this year, and ironically even last year, even though we were coming down the home stretch on that whole post-employment benefit piece, right? Everyone understands, and time, right? A lot of life comes down to time and money. You appreciate that yourselves as board members, right? In your professional life and your personal life. So that got the discussion. I'm not going to comment further on what you can read there that I preferred or prepared before. But if I flip over to really what is the 6th page, and you look at kind of the bottom third, where I have underline the group review the notes and then discuss the following items. Kind of that first bullet point just talks about incentives, right? So we've talked a lot about that the last several years, but rather than trying to decide on should there be an incentive for unused days, we didn't want the post-employment benefit piece to not get figured out till we figured that one out, right? We figured that could have us in the weeds for a couple more years. So that's still floating out there. And I think just someone that had asked about, what other some structures that, people are aware of that might work. So you see references to anything from kind of maybe the paid time off or a blend thereof from our current system to the future. Different questions about if there's some sort of payout. Again, different districts or organizations do that differently. Certainly, is it annually? Is it at some point in the future? Different types of, is there a way to at least try to offer some sort of benefit or incentive there? Again, the PTO piece, that's a system that at least some people are familiar with. If a school district does it, often fewer days are given, right? You and I know, right, from being educators, board members, that where a lot of your day jobs are different from a teacher, right? If a person's gone, the work builds up for them till they're back. With a teacher, we need to have a substitute, right? That there's a difference there. And then the last bullet point on that page, someone suggested, hey, maybe some sort of system that's a little bit of a blend between something new and what we've had for many years is a wise way to go. That was a good suggestion. Flipping over to page 7 of our notes. Someone had asked about the possibility of, is there a way to have a system that allows people to donate a day to someone else when their colleague is in need? There certainly are possibilities. I think there are some inherent HR challenges with that most people don't think about, but that came up. And then that next one, this was, I don't think that really the board needs to worry about, but kind of chaperoning. They were kind of talking internally about there's a difference between going to something as a parent and going something, yeah, you're a teacher, you're a parent, but you're actually serving as a chaperone. I think we can all appreciate, right? There are the differences there that teachers were talking about. And then that next kind of black bullet point before wrapping this up, starting with some sort of flexible day concept or even pilot would appear to be one of, again, the key nuggets. And again, we can have, I know as President Stefani and I have talked, having an idea or two as the board, not wanting to get ahead of a little bit of board discussion, but something where I can go to Jake, for example, and say, if we had 1 incentive day or 2 incentive days, if you read further into the notes, I don't need to read that to you now. What would the potential cost of the district be, right? So that the board then has a chance to say, oh, if we wanted to try that, what are we talking about as far as cost? So those are things we know you'd want to know. I know one of our teachers had offered, hey, maybe we should have a work group on this. So I just reminded that compensation committee, and again, both Roger and Mike saw that, hey, even if the board has a work group just of board members, which we've done a couple of times on policies in the past, even then, we don't technically do that until the board talks about it and says, yeah, we would like to see a work group, Dan, could you work with some people to pull that together? So kind of a logistic thing. We don't want people to get out of work. The next one, system for special requests, as we near kind of the end of the review I have for you tonight. The board has seen information from me on that a few years now, and back last fall already, you said, yep, Dan, the fact that we have, a few of these requests, depending on the year pop up, agreed we need some sort of system. So I gave that to them, and overall the attendees gave positive feedback on that. A lot of them frankly weren't even really aware that that's something you and I sometimes have to deal with colleagues with making requests. I think many teachers aren't aware of that. So having a system like that is all sketched out, and really I try to pull that special request into one page that eventually will go into the salary and supplemental pay guide, right? Just trying to think a few steps ahead. And really, that's what I have for you for my part of that. I don't know if there's anything, Mike or Roger, that you would add.
No, I think you summed it up.
I like that system for special requests being nailed down. We've been talking about that for years.
Yeah, I think that's great, Dan. I think that's, and then again, there's gonna be more to follow on this. It's just, that's where we're at today. So Jake will be running numbers, and we'll be looking at this later this spring. So if nothing further on that, I'm gonna move along to point 9, achievement gap reduction school board mid-year review, another informational item.
That's right. We have Jen Weber in the okay, I didn't know what was with you guys coming from Whitewater. So anyway, this AGI report is something that historically was done only at the end of the year, and the last few years they added a mid-year report. So again, it just basically deals with math and reading, kindergarten through 3rd grade. That AGR is the updated version of what many of you heard about years ago called SAGE, with small class sizes. Again, this is simply an informational item. DPI wants us to make sure that we're having people not just do an end of year report, but a mid-year report. So that's included for your information. Nothing necessary or no action necessary. that, if you have, let me know, and I'm sure Jen will follow up next time she's with us.
Can I ask a quick
Of
question?
course.
As Sage was, people were dropping out the pot of
Mhm.
grew, is that still happening?
The pot's not growing, but they haven't gone.
Okay, so even if
Good
people are dropping out, that pot's not growing.
The total pot's growing, so somebody dropped out, they're more for us.
Okay, so that is still happening.
Yeah, it's kind of defined amount.
Yeah.
People might drop out, but no one knew, since they don't, schools or school districts aren't getting in new, right? That makes
But
sense.
it was just that pot that I knew grew as people dropped. I didn't know if they stopped that. Right,
Portion grows.
our portion comes still.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
They're not dumping a bunch of money into it for
No,
various
but
reasons.
I didn't want them to take away that other one either.
Good. Moving along to the board vacancy update, we've all, you've probably all heard and seen things from Dan about, Scott Alger. First I want to thank Scott for doing everything. If he's seeing, I'm sure Scott is, I think he's out of the country right now, so he's probably not watching this, but just want to thank him publicly for his time on the board. He and his family moved out of the district, so that is, we just by the way things are, because of that, he's, he can't
And
have them on the board.
correct. And he is planning to visit us next month for the meeting, so we could do a little recognition thing there, and we'll do that. So, well, that's the plan.
But I think it's important to say, his daughter still is school choice into the school district, so nothing has really changed as far as their family being in the district, but unfortunately, the way the rules read, that we don't have an option. Once he's out of the district, we have to, he can't be on board.
Can't open enroll board. No.
No, which is, well, you know, I don't understand that rule, actually, the spirit of it. If you open enroll your family into the district, you know, I believe you should have the right to be on the board, but I don't make these rules. These rules are made way above us. So, sorry. I'm
Pretty
just
far
throwing
above us.
that out, but it's disheartening.
Yeah, well, and I think those of us that are familiar with the Sturgeon Bay geography know, for the most part, right, our district is the city limits. Plus a section, right, of the town of Sebastopol going up Bay Shore Drive, right? Well, a number of years ago, many of us also know that a portion of, town, say, for example, behind Target, was annexed into the city limits, right? So there's a subdivision back there that's, as we all know, and I know when Carrie and I were coming to town, right? Oh, there's homes for sale back there, right? City of Sturgeon Bay, it's right there. And then upon doing homework, and of course, I'm unique in that I actually have a map of the district, right? That, whoa, wait a minute. If you're far enough to the one side, you could be in the school district of Sturgeon Bay, but actually most of that is Southern Door schools. Now, again, even our realtor said, but Dan, all those kids pretty much go to Sturgeon Bay. Well, again, right, open enrollment or school, they're choosing, families are choosing to come in, which they can do. But at least at this point, the same doesn't apply for someone who might be a school board member. So the memo there, I'm not going to read it to you, but it got far enough, and thanks to Ann, she did a lot of legwork on this as well, with reaching out to Wisconsin Association of School Boards, the Elections Commission, and she got sent on a little bit of the ones that check with the other and all that kind of stuff. So in the end, it was like, okay, I'll nicely say it got ridiculous enough. It was like, yeah, you know what, it's time to check with an attorney to help us pull some of this nonsense together. So that's where this is. The long and the short of it is that there are 3 names that continue to be on the ballot for April. Scott's will be one of them because he had filed all the paperwork and was intending to run for the board and continue on the board. So they don't look at it and then remove his name from that. So as the attorney kind of lays out for us, really, someone could choose to run as a write-in candidate, right? They could declare that with basically the election process. But then that individual would have to finish in the top 3 vote getters. As I think you and I know, the way most people look at it, they see 3 names, vote for 3, right? Even if they talk to someone right outside the election and they could write it in, right? Most people just kind of check those boxes. That's what typically happens. So a person could choose to register as a write. So we'll kind of put this information out, right? As a write-in candidate, run for the board in that fashion, but it's not a case where, let's say I were resident Dan Chair and I go, I'm gonna register as a write-in candidate, all I need is one vote. Because Scott can't be reelected, doesn't work that way. I would have to be one of the top 3 vote getters, knowing that I'm going up against 3 people who are actually on the ballot. So, long story short, that's the way that goes. So, if a person would register as a write-in candidate and not finish, we wouldn't have anyone in the top 3 because Scott's reelected, and or we had no one register as a write-in candidate. Either way, then it comes back as the attorney summarizes for us, which made sense to us. Then the board follows the appointment process, which this board has done several times before. All right, so as I'm looking at it, we obviously have to let the process play out and do proper communication. But once we know the official results of the April election, unless a write-in candidate would end up with more votes than one of the 3 people on the ballot, which again, possible but not likely, then we would go into, okay, the board is seeking, and again, our policy lays that out, even though I think there's a revision of that policy somewhere in our list we're about to get to here. They submit a basic letter or email. We pick a night. Again, what I've kind of bounced out to you and shared with Mike, to me, taking the May learning session would make sense because it's already on your calendar, rather than trying to come up with another night. Talk to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it ends up being, and then the board can decide to make an appointment. And if we follow that timeline, then that person theoretically could join us already for the May school board meeting, as Ann and I have talked about, which is when we're doing our board reorganization anyway. So really, that person would, no, they wouldn't kind of have the advantage of knowing what's going on with April school board meeting, so to speak, but they kind of be getting into the cycle really with anybody else.
Just one point of clarification. If, given all of this happens, the way you're saying, that person would, whoever we would appoint, would be appointed only for that year. Then next spring, they're up for re-election, as are the normal 3 on the board. Because we always just to review, we have 3 people. This is more for the public. We have a 9-member board. 3 are always up for re-election every spring. So we would have the normal 3 up for re-election next year, plus that additional if it was an appointment. So we'd have 4 that would be on the ballot, but the appointment would then, to keep everything same, they are then running for a 2-year stint. Even though they would have been appointed for 1 year, and then the 2 years would be.
Whoever the top 3, but the lowest vote getter is the
4th
year.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
The 4th leading vote getter, yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
If you really want fun, read in the memo, and we have talked about this because I think this is when Joel Kitchens was elected to the assembly, right? There's the before or after November, if it ends up being a 1 or a 2-year basically appointment, which then impacts if it's a 1 or 2-year term, which is even more unique yet. But
And I mean, many of us, I was appointed on the board because of someone had to leave for a job concern. I mean, that has happened many times. So I think we're done with that informational item.
yeah, just informational, but we wanted to make it an official part of the meeting, other than me just sharing it with you, and then we'll do some communication.
All right, so moving along to the meat, the first reading of board policy updates. Dan, do you have your water over you?
I'm taking a drink right now.
Yeah, so this is 830.2, starting with small a 7450 property inventory.
All right, so this one, as you can see, like some of the others, is a major rewrite. We attempted in the policy stuff, we selected to keep it as simple as possible with those options. From the paragraph in here, I'll just kind of hop into that. Going all the way back to December 2014, the U.S. Department of Ed has released newly updated, it's kind of funny when you think about the years, right? Updated administrative regulations known as EDGAR to those people in the finance world. This major rewrite of the regulations was issued after nearly 40 years of very little change in the compliance measures. I don't think we live in that world anymore, right? Where something sits in compliance for 40 years, right? Maybe 40 days until they come up with something that we've seen. So anyway, then those regulations, then it gives the long list. I don't need to read that to you. That's really what's going on with the property inventory piece. All right, as we move into this next batch, really, these are some long ones as you saw them, right? But there's also a lot of overlap within the policies and the way they group them, in some cases, groupings of 3. So I'll go to BA, if you will, which is 1422.02, 3122.02, and 4122.02. non-discrimination based on genetic information of the employee. Really, those policies, and again, there's also reference to guidelines and forms, but we typically focus on the policies, relate to discrimination and harassment on the basis of protected class, have been revised to comport with the new Title IX regulations. Again, Title IX really comes into a number of these. You and I know most of that is for post-secondary institutions. However, a lot of this policy stuff now is pulling K-12 into it. So really, that's what's going on. So because of the number of revisions involved, the end of this paragraph and several of these others say, right, they basically are replacement policies. So that's what's going on with that one. And again, you also see in this one kind of that whole GINA, right? Genetic Information, Non-Discrimination Active going back to 2008. That kind of flows through, especially this group of three. Moving on to B, letter B, 1422, 3122, and 4122, non-discrimination, equal employment opportunity, really minus the GINA piece about genetic information. This is the same basic explanation, right? I don't need to reread that to you, nor will I have to do that several different times. Again, dealing with policies and those Title IX regulations. Letter C, 1623, 3123, and 4123, Section 504, ADA prohibition against disability, discrimination in employment. Again, same basic explanation as above, all reworked to align with Title IX regulations. One more time, kind of in this list of how similar this is before one of something else. 1622, 3362, 4360, 1662, 3362, 4362, and 5517, employment and student anti-harassment. These policies, again, related to discrimination and harassment on the basis of protected classes and revised to comport with the new Title IX regulations. I'm also going to jump down to near the end of that paragraph where it's going to reference, possibly as one of our board members accurately found, one of the worst summaries they've ever had in our Neola readings for 2266. I'm going to do my best to unravel that for us here in a few minutes. Non-discrimination on the basis of sex and education programs or activities. That is referenced in this batch, and we're going to talk about that briefly. Letter E, 2260.01, Section 504 of the ADA, prohibition against discrimination based on disability. Here I will read the first one of the two sentences. This policy places particular emphasis on protections for students who are identified as having a disability under Section 504 and the ADA. This includes accessibility to qualified individuals with regard to facilities, programs, and activities as directed by federal law. I will read one more sentence. Revisions to the policy are based on recent Office for Civil Rights investigations and reviews of compliance issues, particularly related to vocational education and career technical education programs, with particular emphasis on vocational education. I know we all agree how important that is. A lot of that comes through in this policy. I'll move us along to letter F, which is very similar to up above, 2260, non-discrimination and access to equal educational opportunity. Again, related to discrimination and harassment on the basis of protected class and Title IX regulations. I'll flip over. Next batch, batch 31.1. Some of these are a little closer to being a more traditional, like what we usually see, even though some of them end up being quite long also. So 0100 definitions, you see the term administrator was added with a definition for when that term is used in policy. Districts have that option of using a general definition or listing specific positions. As you saw in there, we took the general definition approach. Next up, 0142.1 electoral process. Pursuant to statutory changes referenced, this policy has been revised to meet the new school board election notice requirement, public notice of incumbent non-candidacy decisions. Basically, this will be another one that for at least Denise and our friends with the website, right? That's something else that we will then have to notice on the website. Moving along, 0142.5 vacancies. Policy just came up in a legal memo we looked at a few moments ago. So it does sometimes come up, even though this is some revisions. Basically, the policy was revised to add clarity and linkage to the existing policies relating to quorums and voting to further guide the board regarding procedures when voting to fill a vacancy, right? So in essence, rather than having to be a majority of our group of 9, it's a majority of who's there that night is the short version. Moving along, 0144.5, board member behavior and code of conduct. Policy was revised to specifically include attendance at meetings as a general expectation of board members. Also acknowledges the doctrine of incompatibility of office. That's referenced in letter C, which if you look at our policy 0144.3, really we call conflict of interest. And to require individual communications of board members be distinct from board authorized messages, right? You are residents, you can have an opinion on something. That doesn't mean necessarily that's what the whole board is saying. Moving on, 0152 officers specifies the process by which board officers are selected by majority of votes of those members present and participating in such action, similar to what I mentioned just up above with vacancies. 0165 notice of meetings. The revisions to this policy reflect new statutory language on how meetings of the board or non-board committees that require public notice may be posted. Now, you and I know we of course notice our board meetings, but we don't have a whole system of committees like some school districts do, so that committee meets really for the most part doesn't apply. Letter G, 1421, 31, 21, 41, 21, criminal history record check and employee self-reporting requirements. This is good stuff. The title has been revised to include a reference to new language that's been added to the policy regarding employee self-reporting requirements. Policy revisions require employees to report any arrest, indictment, conviction, no contest, or guilty plea or other adjudication for any criminal or municipal events within a specific timeline. This also goes on our list, as Ann and I were talking today, of things we have to remind people somehow of each year. Physical examination, 1460, 3160, 4160. The revisions to this policy are made to include alignment with state statutes. I'm going to jump ahead a couple sentences. In addition, the physical examination exception is clarified as it pertains only to those who use faith exclusively for medical care. It should also be noticed that those who file for the physical exemption still must be free of communicable tuberculosis, and that only diagnosis and not a treatment. 2210 curriculum development. This policy is revised to reflect the requirements of Wisconsin Act 30, which amends that section of statute to require instruction regarding the Holocaust and other genocides at least once between grades 5 through 8, and then at least once in grades 9 through 12. That requirement began in the school year, in case you were wondering, and it's listed in letter O of that policy. Switching over to what is, I think, clearly become the least favorite of the item on the list. Good catch. 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex and education or activities. I basically drew a big line through their paragraph because we think it stinks. All right, so coming back, if some of this sounds a little familiar, we actually did a first reading in December and a second reading in January on what were more actually substantive updates to the policy. Whereas this, the best we can decipher from some different reading and checking, really, one can argue it's practically a technical correction because you take something like he and she that kind of shows up as they're updating different policies and just kind of like rather he or she, there was a problem in the district to say the board member, really, which doesn't make a change to practice or past policy on the topic. So that really is a clarification of sorts. Again, this wording of summary is confusing. The other piece that I have on my own scribbled notes here, and Ann and I were looking through, this whole paragraph talks about a hearing portion option, which our district, as best we can decipher over the years of having this policy, didn't go with that route, right? We have different ways people can have a concern or complaint or whatnot, but not the big hearing piece that's referenced there. So long story short, if you also were confused looking at this, we don't blame you. All right, that's the best I can tell you is basically almost like a technical correction. It doesn't change our operations really. Ignore that paragraph. Let me take a drink of water. All right, next up, 312201, 412201, drug-free workplace. These policies were revised to make the language more user-friendly by inserting new headings, adding clarification, adding references to the Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988 and Board Policy 3161, unrequested leaves of absence / fitness for duty. Language is also added to clarify, and does this ever come up? Goodness, this type of thing I think is coming up with schools and businesses more and more than ever before, and I'm guessing you're going to hear about it in the state budget talks. Language also added to clarify that a prescription is an exception only to the extent the prescription is lawful in Wisconsin and under federal law. Here's the elephant in the room one, right? For example, medical marijuana prescriptions from providers in states that permit it are not an exception to the drug-free workplace policies here in Wisconsin. Why? Because prescription marijuana remains illegal both here in Wisconsin and under federal law. Now, do I think they're gonna be talking down in Madison about the whole medical marijuana piece? I'm sure they will. I don't know where that'll come. So do we think this policy will come up again, Mrs. Denise? We think it will. And if the whole medical marijuana piece changes, it'll come up probably, every 11 days. So stay tuned.
Not every 40 years.
No, probably not. Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Well played. 4340 grievance procedure. This is kind of an interesting one. You think, could this ever happen? Unfortunately, elsewhere in our country, it is happening as we speak. Language has been added to provide options for an appointment of an IHO or independent hearing officer when the district administrator files a grievance with the district. So all those options, we went with option 4, which was seemed to be pretty clearly the best and most accurate option that fit for us. But sadly, I think I've seen a couple of different news stories just in the last week of problems between district administrators and district/school boards. Claims of discrimination and some other things that are really fortunate. I don't think they're focusing on teaching and learning a whole lot in their day-to-day operations and school board meetings or student recognition, sadly. 5113 open enrollment. This policy is advised to have the option for the board to expressly authorize the district administrator to approve or deny open enrollment applications on behalf of the board. This authority is provided expressly in regulation, and this revision provides the board with an option for approving such authority. Just a couple extra comments. One, in the first kind of 2 short paragraphs, Ann and I found a couple X's that shouldn't be here because we're not a union high school district. So that, I think it's the first sentence, I don't have it in front of me, I apologize. The first paragraph, first sentence of the second paragraph talks about all the stuff that we do within a district, including siblings. And then there's an exception for union high school districts that have siblings in those feeder districts. That's not us, right? Southern Wisconsin, a little bit northern Wisconsin has that. So, and again, not to throw you off there. In fact, I think Ann already cleaned that up for us for next month. But the sibling piece we have, the waiting list is something we probably need to come up with a better system for. Just letting you know that. And then I will have a closing comment on this. Most school boards don't get involved in reviewing and approving or denying open enrollment applications. Ironically, we do have a neighbor that does that. Boards set policy and approve capacities each January. We do that. I think that's the right way to handle it, not to have the elected officials going through open enrollment applications one by one, my professional opinion. So we'll keep doing what we're doing basically. 5,200 attendance. The policy has been revised to include private school and home-based education students who are attending the district under that part-time open enrollment provisions, right? Those have been around for many years, with the same excused absence as regular full-time high school students for serving as an election day official. I don't think I've ever heard from a principal about a part-time attendee student who might be homeschooled having truancy problems, but hey, they're officially excused to be an election day official. 5215, missing and absent children. This policy is revised to define the term used as used in the policy based on the missing and absent children provisions from the Federal Health and Human Services Code. These revisions are intended to clarify as well that the purpose of the policy is not to facilitate student enrollment or have anyone feel tricked there, but rather to facilitate our assistance in child welfare in the event a missing or absent child would arrive at a school facility. I'll also add a note beyond what they have, that moving that from that administrative guideline concept right into the policy itself, like this one does, is wise in many situations. We've talked about that before. Next page, 5410, promotion, placement, and retention. In accordance with state statute, specific criteria for promotions from 4th to 5th grade and from 8th to 9th grade are listed, along with the option for additional criteria. We are not recommending those additional criteria at this time. 5461, children at risk of not graduating from high school. The policy is revised to clarify misleading language that appeared to require a plan for each individual student that falls into the category, rather than what was intended, a district plan that addresses program services and strategies to serve at-risk students. And again, you see a basic at-risk plan each year as a part of the approvals we typically do in summer. The next one, letter R, we're going to table. till next month, 5722 school-sponsored publications and productions. For some different reasons, Ann and I are going to do a follow-up with our Neola rep Gene on this one. So stay tuned there. That official first reading is not happening today. Letter S, 6108, authorization to make electronic fund transfers, again, or ACH. The policy is revised to add the reference to ACH payments as a form of electronic funds transfer to account for the growing use of that form of payment, right? That has really taken off in the last, I don't know, couple of years. 6114, cost principles, federal spending funds. Spending federal funds. Goodness gracious. Hope I just don't say anything inappropriate by accident there. Really, this one you can see, especially the bottom of page 2 and a little bit of page 3 on the top is the change. This policy was revised to provide greater detail and allowability guidance for districts regarding the expenditure of federal funds. Really, this was a significant increase in funding for school districts in the third pandemic stimulus bill. But again, we know the state did not provide us an increase. Sorry, I had to comment. So we needed those dollars. So greater specificity, as it says in the last phrase, has been requested by program reviewers and auditors. So when the EOLA came through. 6146, cost issuance, tax exempt bond compliance. A lot of changes, especially on page 1. This policy has been revised to meet federal law with regard to the issuance of tax exempt obligations and or obligations eligible for tax credits. 6152, student fees, fines, and charges. So in your packet, depending how you were looking at it, this one and the next one, 615201 were flip-flop. So I'm just going to go with the order it is in our backgrounds in case you go, oh, did I miss something? So this policy 6152 has been revised to include reference to the DPI fee category based upon the Board of Education versus Sinclair case. So there's added statute and opinions from the Attorney General. Moving along to 615201 waiver of school fees or fines. This policy clarifies eligibility for free and reduced lunches as related to school fees. That next sentence, remember, oh, that's right. If a district had provided free breakfast and lunch, like especially was common, right, in these last couple of years, right, then it kind of makes it more complicated. I'll finish by reading the last sentence. This information may be provided from parents directly to the district or through direct certification through the Division of Child and Family State database. And I don't know numbers, but I believe we've had quite a few more direct certifications in recent years with everything that's been happening. And again, as we think of some of the families that are in the district. Moving over next page, 7100 facilities planning. This policy is revised to update language and to account for current analytical processes relative to evaluating space needs and enrollment projections. I'll pause there. Rather than read the rest of that, I'll tell you basically, as our business manager, you know, Jake takes care of a variety of these updates for us, whether it's when we approve the budget, whether he gives some of his reports, the board retreat, like letting us know what's happening with some of these different enrollment pieces and numbers. 8310, public records, language revised to give the district administrator authorization to develop administrative guidelines rather than to direct that they be created for the account. For not all districts have administrative guidelines, right? So our district has them, but our focus is on school board policies, right? We don't have a ton of energy we're putting into administrative guidelines since we're basically trying to, you know, get caught up and keep up with the policy itself. Letter Z, the last one of this section, 8450, control over casual contact communicable diseases. In my own notes, I have COVID flashback for myself here. So if my blood pressure spikes, please, you know, it's not because of anything too terrible that happened to me today. I'm going to jump down to the last sentence. The purpose of these revisions is to differentiate between the obligation to comply with health department directives in an outbreak linked to the facility as compared to generalized mitigation efforts recommended by the health department. So a lot of people, the further we got into COVID, was like, oh, it started one way, and then at what point, like, does the school board decide on something as opposed to the health officer, right? So I think everyone is more informed. Again, that's not something we've ever kind of run into before. So, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how we look at it, we'd be much more prepared if something happens in the future. Next section, 31.1 technical corrections, and has us reminded here that remember, this is just one reading technically needed. One of these we're gonna bump to the next month, as I'll say a little further down. So 2421 career and technical education. Basically, the main part of this is they had a typo in there. It needs to be Start College Now is the correct title of that. So that was the main part of the tweak there. Next, 3310, 4310, employee expression of non-instructional settings. These policies have been revised to remove a reference to guidelines and identify that the optional provisions would simply be what you and I might call expectations regarding staff member expression. 5136, personal communication devices. This policy was revised to correct the policy title and the cross-reference to another policy, 551701. 5350, student suicide prevention. This is a technical correction in the heading, adding the word prevention to, again, that policy title. 551701 is referenced just a couple ago, bullying. This revision modifies the current language to engage with legal counsel in the event a complaint involves either the district administrator or a member of the board. Well, that would never happen here, but we're covered just in case. 5880, public performance by students. This policy was revised to clarify the approval process for student public performances, right? The board doesn't really give formal approval for these. Instead, they replace that word approves with establishes the following minimum criteria for permitting. Has to be an attorney involved to come up with that phrase. And you and I would have come up with a different substitute word. The next one is the one that I referenced earlier, that word. It was a good question. We're going to bump and I'll explain why. 7455, accounting system for capital assets. All right. So as you see in there, basically shifting from the term fixed to capital, but in our version of the board, kind of the revised policy, if you will, for the first reading, that was only changed in one spot. And I don't remember if it was 10 or 11 spots, whoever had caught that for us, we appreciate that. Like, wait a minute, that's not right. So Andemise did a little digging, looked at another one of the school districts that uses Neola, and we compare notes with, and sure enough, their version actually had the proper changes throughout the policy from fixed to capital. So Anne's digging through, looking to make those changes. We'll probably double check with our contact at Neola, Gene, just in case there's something else we're missing. But the plan is to bring this back. Honestly, that was the word weird comes to mind as you dug into it, like, would that have happened? So good catch, Commissioner Wood.
What was the counting?
Yeah, there we go. So this should come back next month for a first reading, and hopefully we'll have it fixed. For you, right? There we go. So thank you, Roger, and thank you, Ann. 753001, cell phone allowance, technical correction, wording of school officials is included. 744006, district issued staff email accounts, deletes the language by signing and submitting form, whatever, annually, right? I mean, people have an email account, that's the one with it. 754007, district issued student email account, again, similar concept. They're not having to do this, that, and the other thing. They have a student email account. That's what we're living in. 7542, access to district technology resources for personally owned communication devices. Policies are revised to include a reference to the definition for quote unquote personal communication device as outlined in another policy, 100 definitions. 8120, volunteers. This policy has been revised to correct the appropriate title for veteran volunteers to the Department of Veterans Affairs. This is a technical correction. There you have it. 8660, transportation by private vehicle. This policy is modified to include leased vehicles within the policy regarding the transportation of students. We don't currently utilize vehicle leases, which then could be used, but I suppose at some point perhaps we could. 970001, advertising and commercial activities. Basically, it kind of gets rid of that option for an administrative guideline way at the end, which again, we did not take. That takes us to one more policy to talk about that we did talk about a little bit last month. We'll do our best to get the right sheets out so I can walk you through that one as hopefully painlessly as possible. So human growth and development, we talked about that last month. So we discussed a few different things, and as some of you know, we didn't bother the whole board with a bunch of emails. The further we dug into this, and Ann connected with Gene, our person, this is one that basically the pendulum has swung. They went from pretty detailed to far less detail. And then probably in some communities where this can be quite a thorny topic, some of the clients were saying, oh, we want some more of those detailed options back. So the pendulum started to swing back. So rather than have a conversation about our past policy, the version we talked about last month, only to then turn around and have another version coming up. We're bringing the most updated forward. And is it on a piece of white paper?
Yeah, I didn't hand these out
Okay.
because I didn't know if everybody wanted to see all these versions or just what we're presenting today.
Why don't we start with the newest one?
This is today.
This we may or may not, if we have a couple of the other versions, if you want to see it, but I'll take a run at this one and we'll see if we're getting closer. You and I with the same one. That's good. Thank you. Near the top of page 2 is number 4 that we talked about last month, okay? However, if you line this one up with the one last month, it's not a perfect match. So let me just back you up to page 1 just very briefly to kind of show you. So I'm just gonna kind of hold it up on mine. So down where it's letter A 1 through 8, the one you saw last month was letter A 1 through 11. Boy, where would 3 of them have gone? For the most part, mystery solved, as Dan and I were looking at this. They become near the top of page 2, the 5, 6, and 7 for the most part. The tweak, number 7, the wording was tweaked a little bit. That weren't a part of the different options in the one we talked about last month. All right, so specifically, since Commissioner Holland asked us to bring this back for the first reading, which everyone agreed to, number 4 was the one we talked about the most. That parenthetical option did not have an X in it. Upon checking with Director Weber, Principal Smolin, and teacher Ben Herland, our health teacher, basically Ben said, we're covering all of that. So as we then were looking to make the update prior to the most recent version, we filled the X in there since Mr. Herland said, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. We're covering it, go ahead and mark it. I'm kind of paraphrasing. All right. So that's where we thought we were all set. And then, every now and again with Neola, all of a sudden, wait a minute. That popped up and was different than what we talked about last time. So that's where let me just draw your attention to the green right underneath that and the items 5, 6, and 7, which Principal Smolin verified for me today with Mr. Herland that we are indeed covering those as well. But here I'll have an additional thought from our rep from Neola, Gene, a retired administrator. So you see those following options are permissive. They had been previously removed, but then they were brought back since some are still wanting to weigh in at the board level to say yes, no, or whatnot. So basically, I would kind of put the summary to numbers 5, 6, and 7 from what we're hearing from Mr. Smolin and Mr. Herland. Yes, those are taught. What Gene, our Neola rep, again, retired administrator, would say they're taught, but you wouldn't have to mandate them that they are taught at the board level. Right, so it's an option that we could, but at the same time, that's where kind of, right, how Gene kind of advises us on that sort of thing. Is there anything else I'm missing with that? I'm getting a little.
No, it's just they're not statutorily required, those 3 anymore. That's why they're as an option.
Yeah, eliminated, brought back as options. Mr. Herland is touching on those in appropriate ways in the TJ Walker Middle School health class, but we hadn't filled in X's partially because that's pretty recent information. The other thing I would touch on for number 7, numbers 5 and 6 are extremely similar. I'm trying to remember, maybe even they were basically word for word to the old ones that were back with 1 through 11. Number 7, that wording is tweaked a little bit. The old wording was something, I didn't write the whole thing down, about methods for developing healthy life skills, yada, yada, yada. So that's the same concept, but they did tweak that wording a little bit. So back to the matter at hand. This is a first reading. We talked last month. There was a question about what's going on with number 4 or not. We now know. Yes, indeed, Mr. Herland has let his principal know he is teaching that and is very comfortable with that. So number 4 was, again, basically where we left off last month. President Stefani, why don't I just pause here and see if people have thoughts, questions, comments, and take drink of water. Anywhere?
I think they're important topics. We're already teaching them. I would vote, that's the right way to say it, that we check them. Why not continue?
And by them, we're talking about numbers 5, 6,
5,
and
6,
7,
and
just to
7,
make sure
yeah.
I'm tracking you. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I feel the same way about checking 5, 6, and 7 as well.
I would oppose those check marks on the basis that our rule of rep is guiding us down that path. We're not required to check those boxes. Therefore, as long as we are, we can in good faith have confidence that we're checking our own boxes. We don't have to do it in policy.
Well, we don't have to check any of the boxes. Do we?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there's guidance being given to us that those are probably the elements that have to be.
They're all recommended.
But there's some that are statutorily, we have to, right? And
There are some that, yes.
we have to.
So 5, 6, and 7 are not statutorily
Right,
required.
that's why they've got them in green. The 1 through 4 are statutory required. That's one of the revisions is they're highly recommended those. And I actually, in talking with Jean, she talked about the difference between what is statutorily required and what is optional. And she said, she always thinks about once you put it in your policy, you have to be stringent about continuing to teach that, even though norms may change.
Mhm.
So you really want to look at once you check it in the box, it's there until you make a policy change.
I would feel comfortable leaving it as it is unchecked. But the options will be there. But for the reasons that you just stated. We're not tied to these.
When would it ever change? What was the verbiage that you used, and if norms change?
Well,
That's talking about puberty, pregnancy, parenting, body image, gender stereotypes, health benefits, side effects, skills needed to make responsible decisions about sexuality. In my opinion, when would that ever change?
I think that some of the statute references are, I can't see the dates that these changes occur, but at the back, at the bottom end of all of the policies is the statutes, but that won't tell me what change was made. But that's when they make, on the state level, when they change it is when they will look more in depth at it. Or when there's court cases that change, the results of a court case change the way it's done.
I just think they're important topics. And I don't know why we wouldn't touch on them.
One thing I think we talked about last month that I didn't touch on, now that I'm thinking about it here, President Stefani, is way kind of at the bottom of page 2. We did touch base last month. Maybe it bears referencing that this is one of those topics and policies that does reference a citizens advisory committee. So I think somewhere along the line, I think someone, I remember who had made the observation, asked the question, I don't recall exactly last month, about, well, since that citizens advisory committee comes together from time to time, and Director Weber knows that that's on her list of things to work with Mr. Hurlin and Principal Smallin to get some of those folks together, that theoretically, whether it's items 5, 6, and 7, or something else related to this policy, that group could, have a discussion and maybe provide some direction, right? They're not the policy setting group, of course, but that was something we at least touched on last month that I didn't bring up tonight. Anything I'm missing that we talked about?
No, so I'm just confused. Are we just, we have to say yes or no with the check marks for 5, 6, or 7, right? That's what we're looking to decide.
In essence, yeah, I mean, let me back up, maybe I shouldn't say yes. First reading of the revised policy.
Yeah.
Based on the discussion last month, it was specific to number 4, right? If we had at that time the information on 5, 6, and 7, we would have lobbed it out to you. Since then, when Gene said, you know what, even though you guys aren't all the way caught up to some of the stuff from last summer, even though great news, that means we're getting close, right? Getting close. Why don't? And it's kind of basically what you said. Why don't I give you this one? We'll worry about the rest of that batch later. Because you're talking about this policy, and that's where Ann and I looked at it, and it was like, oh, great, now I got 5, 6, and 7 moved from someone else to here, and that wasn't what we had talked about last month.
So the policy last month was, let's just say revision 1, even though there was a revision 2 in between, and she knew that there was extensive language and discussion going on. So she said, I want you to hop ahead to revision 3, which hopped us forward 1 step. And that's, and essentially why there's always 2 readings of board policy changes to enable the dialogue that's happening today and last month. And at this point, you know, if people are comfortable with it, it can come back for, you know, make the changes and come back for first reading again next month. Or you could make a motion tonight and then we would revise it as such, and at the second reading, it would be approved based on which comes in.
And sometimes people need to think about it, which we understand too. Back to your point, right? Because we're not voting on anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, I would be under the belief that this comes back next month. So we're not.
Yeah, definitely does. Then the question becomes, at this point, the way we have it, we have 4 checked. We don't have 5, 6, and 7 checked. So as we think of, again, they're not votes, right? But as we think of a couple people that have said, oh, I'd be in favor of adding the checks in essence for next month, right? Again, paraphrasing, but I think we all know the gist of what I'm trying to summarize. And we've had a couple of people say, I'm comfortable with it being, you know, the teacher sounds like is teaching it. I don't know that we need to check those. So.
Can you help me understand, sort of which are, do you know which ones are the statutorily required ones and which ones aren't? Is it only the last that are not? Just thinking about if we are checking some already that are not, yeah, what the reasoning.
That way we
not
don't
be-
feel like, oh,
Yeah.
we think we have it, and Gene says, actually, that one's different.
Okay.
So why don't we check with
Yeah.
Gene, our Neola rep, to clarify from any of these, not just those 3, like what's required, what's, you said it right on the money before, and strongly recommended, or however Neola sometimes called, right? You see in that where sometimes it's like, as our client, they want us to take us, other times they say, take it or leave it. And from there. That makes sense?
Yeah, if as a district, we feel like these are all part of a well-rounded curriculum, and we're choosing some to make policy and others not. I want us to think through why would we choose them and others not if they're not all in the same category as far as we know those state statute.
Some of it actually is the dance we constantly walk about. We want things clear enough that you or I or the principals or the teachers or parents know what's going on, right? But sometimes there are topics that you get to a point where having an official policy with great clarity also sometimes causes you problems later on. All right. Think of, I don't know, perhaps maybe the YMCA and transgender bathroom use. Okay, their guidance is different than our guidance, but people still have opinions the way they have them, right? So it's kind of like, oh, are they better off to have a formal policy? Or maybe they're not. You know what I mean? So there's kind of some philosophical stuff there.
All right, let's just in the interest, let's table this then, I believe. We're not making it, unless someone wants to, make a motion for the marks. I'm fine with that, but I believe we're just gonna.
We'll gather that information.
Gather that information, let's bring it back.
To be
next month.
continued.
Yes. And let's move along.
Would you like to hear about more board policy? Or no, you wouldn't?
No.
Principal Derby, come on down. Whatever the short version of what you have is exactly what they want.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, not tonight for my 17.
No.
All right. Ooh, sorry, I had to get back.
I told you to stay alert back there.
That was exciting stuff. All right, just a couple of quick things that I wanted to mention, and honestly, I just want to recognize more of our outstanding students and organizations that we've had here at the high school. Some really great things happening. So we had our music solo ensemble a week ago or so. I want to give a couple of shout outs to some students who made it to state for solo ensemble. So we have Landon Hintz for the snare drum solo, Luke Selly for marimba solo. Okay, Christy Braun for oboe solo, June Van Lieshout for phonium solo, Amelia Langfeld and Jade Tomberlin for flute duet, Gavin Forrest and Gabby Lewitt for saxophone duet, Tim Mandler for piano solo, Amber Spittlemeister and Gavin Forrest for tenor sax duet, Gavin Forrest for the third time for state for piano solo, Roman Tremper for trombone solo, Jack LeClue for marimba solo, Ainsley Stefan for clarinet, and Amelia Langfeld for flute. So just you repeat some names who made it to state for our solo ensemble. So just excited to announce that and share those kids did that. I want to congratulate our mock trial team who made it to state for the first time in maybe forever, for a really long time. Really excited about that. So they're headed to state with Mr. Blahnik and Mr. Pinkard as the coaches, and they go on March 3rd. So pretty excited about that as well. Then you might have heard or seen about our math team. We have a math team here. I don't know if you've heard about them. Pretty outstanding stuff with the leadership of Cliff Wind. They did their unprecedented 22nd consecutive conference meet win. So something really to be extremely proud of and excited to share that. Cliff gets on the announcements. Many of you know Cliff. Gets on the announcements, and I swear he has a thesaurus to share how well they crushed or annihilated or whatever they did after each of their meets. So it's fun to have him on the announcement sharing that out. But 22nd consecutive conference champions. And then just a quick few other things. Our high school will be holding our family teacher conferences next Thursday from 4 to 7. This is the last conferences the last set of conferences that we'll hold for this year. Teachers will be sending out signups for our families. Something that we started last year is actually having a sign up for families to do that. Teachers have liked that because they know who's coming. They can personally reach out to families. And we've heard really positive things from our families who say, then I'm not sitting there waiting for somebody. I have a time slot. So that's been really successful. So we have that next Thursday, February 23rd. Just a couple of other quick things. ACT test is coming up fast. That's on March 7th. For our students, as a reminder, that's just our junior students who will report on that day. It's an all hands on deck to get the ACT test out for all of our students. That's a statewide testing date as well. So all junior statewide test on March 7th. Beyond that, we have Q3 exams coming up on March 16th and 17th, which leads into, which is hard to believe that we're already talking about finishing Q3 and heading into the final quarter of the year. But that leads into our spring break, which starts on Monday, March 20th. So that's just a few of the exciting things happening at the high school.
I think we should have a banner made to put out in front of our school for the math. So anybody driving by, you know.
Knowing that we are. Just to bring like a lot of numbers on there.
Yeah.
Pi or something like that. All right. Any questions or? Thank you. We know where to find you, Principal.
There you go.
Thank you. Principal Smullen, come on down. I know some of you are thinking when you heard Christy Brown's name mentioned again, is there anything that young lady doesn't do?
Not much, right? I just want to share with the board here and everybody else that we have tomorrow, we have a pancake breakfast for the students who completed their FIGHT cards. They're being recognized for positivity, responsibility, initiative, determination, and empathy. We invited 25 families to that. So that's our first time ever doing this. So hope we have a good turnout. And that's going to be held tomorrow at 7 a.m. in the middle school gym. So I think Stephen Jacobson, he has been the epicenter of this program, and so we're gonna have a good time. Students who've earned the award are getting a free T-shirt, and obviously all their entire family is welcome to come. And he's put together an incredible slide presentation, which is really, I hope we can get it on our webpage. It's really something pretty cool to see. Secondly, remember kids, TV lands, there's no school for you on Friday, this Friday, the 17th. Our staff is gonna be working on a couple of things that we're, so I talked to you before, I think at the retreat. Our math team is gonna be having time to converse with CISA 6 about a math audit. Reading intervention team is gonna be working with Stacy Judas on sending out goals. And the rest of the staff is gonna be working on our work with students with writing, such as like sentences. It doesn't sound like much, sentences and paragraphs, but we're gonna be working on generating compound and complex sentences with the students. That's one of our goals. Third, as I'm wrapping up here, Stephanie Skolansky, she came in from the Wisconsin PBS Network. She met with our leadership team. We completed a tiered fidelity inventory. We hope all our schools are going to be doing that this year. She looked at our system, and we looked over 15 key points, and it was really helpful for our staff to hear from her. And as we prepared for her visit, I just want you guys to understand is like, in lieu of some things that have been happening coming out is like how kids, kids make mistakes, right? But I just want you to understand is I have 225 kids, 200 of them, they have 0 or 1 referral. So that means like their teacher asked me, or I had to meet with them, or something was sent in. Maybe as silly as like they were wearing pajama pants, right? Wrong. Or the dress code could have been more enforced, or a little slip up in the classroom. But 200 out of 225. So that's 89, just under 90% of them are doing the right thing. So I just want you to understand, like sometimes we get caught up on a certain group or certain events that happen. So when you really come it down like 8, so as we look at this, 18 kids have been sent like 2 to 5 times. So that's 18. I mean, that's 7% of our student body. And then the last part is 7 kids. They're making up about half the discipline for the entire school. So just put that in perspective. So what do we do with them? Well, our approach. Those kids meet with the counselors, so we have a different program we're using, and they are meeting with the frequency change sort of 4 times a week. They're gonna focus on a goal that they need to work on. We can't have 7 kids disrupt, have half our discipline for our entire school. That's just 3% of our student body. So they have to change. They need some help in some areas. So I just want you to understand that we're working on that. That's my final piece. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smolin. We know you are in there, sleeves rolled up with that particular group of students quite regularly, put it nicely. And we have another principal, Smolin. Mrs. Smolin, welcome to the podium. Hello.
Thank you. As I said, my board report, we're just really proud of our winter benchmark assessment data. We're just chipping away at growing our students and our reading and math. Our intervention and extension groups are in full swing, including we've added readers theaters for some of our extension groups, which is really cool to see just bringing, reading to life. And we're looping in the celebration of Black History Month. So our 4th graders are working on a short skit about the Montgomery bus boycott to be performed at an assembly at the end of the month. So that's awesome. And then our attendance, we're doing some great work around that. Mr. Grawl, our school counselor, Ms. Hartle, and I, our administrative assistant, we meet weekly to review attendance. And so just, in addition to contacting families that were concerned about their attendance, we're doing like some positive. And so getting donations from local businesses. So at our assembly at the end of the month, we're going to celebrate those kids with all of the donations that came in. Sturgeon Bay Community Church was very generous, and other local businesses. So just like showing up, like, thank you. When you're sick, stay home. But if you're well, it's just, we're excited just to celebrate kids being here. Tomorrow is the 5th graders' annual trip to Crossroads. They're doing orienteering and other things. Their cross-country skiing is out because of snow not being on the ground, but they are pivoting and adapting, and so they're still going to have a lot of fun. And our 4th and 5th graders are really excited to go to Madison this year. So studying Wisconsin history in 4th grade, and 5th graders missed it because of
COVID related, whatever, that we're so happy to move on and from, and PTO is sponsoring both those trips. So we're really grateful for their support. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Small. Principal DeVillers is coming on down next. We'll be on to Business Manager Holtz.
Good evening, everyone. Three quick things. First of all, we are on March 3rd. We're going to be having our second round. We have 2 each year of 4K screening. We're on par to welcome about the same number, but a lot of people don't necessarily come to screening and they're registering all the way up to the first day of school. So we're looking forward to that, giving information and serving our new 4K students. Secondly, if you're not doing anything tomorrow, it's a big day at Sawyer. We're bringing back the disco dance party. There will be 2 opportunities if you want to stop by at 9:45. The EC first and second grade will be doing that, and at the 4KK, which I cannot wait to see at 1:30 p.m. will be, there's disco balsa, there's all kinds of stuff happening. I haven't, of course, experienced before. It's something they've done before and they're bringing back, and they earned it as part of a PBS in R3B. So I cannot wait. Please stop by. And if you don't, we'll take pictures and you can watch for them on Facebook for sure. The last thing is I will be meeting with Jenny Spooty in the near future. She has been working with the technology department to change the process by which kids that take school lunch get that recorded. She's going to use a fingerprint pad with their fingerprints on it that will really be more efficient and more accurate. And we just got the okay from the technology department, so we'll meet, we'll teach the staff, we'll teach the students, we'll let the parents know, and we'll be starting that. We decided to start it before the end of the year and see how it goes so that we can hit the ground running next fall. All right.
Thank you, Principal DeVillers. Jake, back from the UW Whitewater recruitment fair today. What do you got?
Jen Weber and I were at Whitewater today. I think one of the things we learned today is, as much as meeting students, you go there and you meet some of the directors and you're able to talk to them about student teacher placements and how to kind of get in there to help grow your own. So some of those conversations I think are going to be just as important as talking with the students. And then beyond my report, Dan referenced earlier today or earlier this evening that Governor Evers is presenting his proposed budget tonight. As part of that, just kind of looking through what some of the proposals for education are, not too big of surprises based on the DPI request in the fall, but a big increase in general equalization aid. Big thing with the general equalization aids, you might hear that as general aids or equalization aids. Those do not go towards increasing our revenue and helping us pay teachers' inflationary costs. So what it does help is offset taxes, which is a good thing, but it doesn't help as far as increasing pay. However, looking at increasing special education aid up to 60%, both in categorical aid and high cost special education aid. He did carry over the $350 per pupil increase proposal from the DPI budget. And then that's year 1 and $650 in year 2. More importantly for us, we'll be looking at $450 per pupil increase for what's called the low revenue ceiling. And that would apply to us. So we would be looking at $450 per pupil revenue limit increase, year 1, $750 in year 2 per his proposal. I shared with the teachers on the compensation committee, kind of a timeline we can look at is the budgets released today or the proposed budgets released today by Governor Evers. I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll start figuring out the legislature's reaction and kind of worst case scenarios. And then we can, based off of the worst case scenarios, at the very least, we can do some kind of planning, even if the budget battle drags out till October. There we go.
Very good.
Thank you.
I just have three items that weren't in my report. You have the rest already for the packet. Those will be in what I'll send out to staff and you'll get a copy of that. Just on the weather closures and delays, again, 2 days closed plus a 2-hour delay, which means at this point, all of our students are fine on instructional time. The principals were just talking about that again in our meeting this morning. Really, we just would have 2 hours so far of professional staff makeup time, which we don't have to wait till June. There are ways we can do that. So I got that. I'm mentioning it to you. It's one of those, my update is probably more for staff when that goes out, when I email that out to them tomorrow. There is the YMCA community breakfast tomorrow. Plan to catch that. And then next Tuesday is our next quarterly meeting where the kind of regional superintendents and the DCMC staff and a couple of purveyor reps sit in. So that's all again.
Good, good. So that brings us to, can I have a motion to go into closed session? At this point?
I want to go into closed session first, 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, competition, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, one being the mid-year performance evaluation of district administrator, and we will return open session.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jennerjohn, second by Commissioner Cruz to go into closed session under 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is a mid-year performance evaluation district administrator, and we will return to open session. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
That needs to be a roll.
Oh, that's right. Roll call vote, sorry.
Commissioner
Procedural.
Schultz?
Here.
Commissioner Howard?
Here.
Cruz? I mean, Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
How about we start over? All right.
Yeah.
How about Commissioner Schultz? Commissioner Howard?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Aye. Commissioner Holland? Aye. Commissioner Stefani?
Aye.
Commissioner Jennerjohn? Aye. Commissioner Chisholm? Aye. And Commissioner Wood? Aye.
All right. We are in closed session.
Slight delay on the thing here, so I'm just,
All right.
I can catch up before I start killing all this.
Aye for the first one.
Well, I drove down last night, so I drove down to Rockhead, got to see
Thank you.
Jess and the kids for the first time in a week and a half. Well, we got the construction going on in our house, and we're down to the nursery, the bedroom, and the bathroom, for a 2-year-old.
Who understands?